Good morning and welcome to worship. I hope you had a good week. Mine's been kind of fun. I've been taking my walks in the morning like usual, but I started a new thing. I'm starting every day to take a picture of the thing that I kind of like best about my walk. And this morning it was a bunch of new yellow flowers. Everything along the trail is bright yellow and gold. Getting ready for the end of summer and the beginning of autumn. It's September, a new month. And we've got a new series of stories that we're going to be starting with. I brought my granddaughter Brooklyn with me today to be my helper and to tell the story with me. And the first thing we're going to do, Brooklyn, is light the candle. Do you remember why we light the candle? No?
It's been 2 or 3 days.
It's been 2 or 3 days since we talked about it. You're right. Okay, we're going to light the candle. This candle reminds us
of Jesus.
You're right. And
I think about it a little. Okay.
good job. Right.
I have
The story.
a strong blow.
You do have a strong glow. The candle reminds us that, Jesus is always with us. But when we come together to worship, like in children's worship, like we're doing right now, he's kind of with us in a special way. And so we kind of think about him, and he's thinking about us.
And he's like a ghost standing right next between us.
He might be. Kind of, like a spirit, probably. Yeah, that's a good way to think of it. Okay, well, let's get started. Remember what this is?
It's a calendar.
It's a calendar. Have you ever seen a calendar that looks like this before?
No.
No. Do you know what season we're in?
Fall.
We're getting ready for fall in the outside world. In the church, we're in this season, which is called ordinary time. And can you guess what the color of ordinary time is?
Green.
Green? How did you know?
Because it's green right here.
Do you see anything else that's green? The calendar or the candle?
And half of the cup.
The cup has green in it. And what else here?
The mat.
The mat or the tablecloth, the altar cloth, yeah. We use green to remind us of ordinary time. We're about right here, which is almost here. Yeah, Advent is the beginning, when it turns blue, is the beginning of the church year. Do you know the beginning of the ordinary year, the regular year? What's the first day of the year?
I forgot a little.
New Year's Day? In January?
January is January 31st, my birthday.
Right, at the beginning of the year. Well, September isn't really the beginning of the year, but to me it's kind of like the beginning of the year because I'm a teacher, and so to me, the beginning of the school year is like the beginning of a new year.
You're a teacher?
I am a teacher, sure. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And you're a student getting ready to start first grade, aren't you? Yeah, that'll be cool.
And I'm about to turn 7.
In January. Yeah. Okay, that's a ways. That's a ways. That'll be in the, probably in this green season. That's when your birthday is, in Epiphany. Yeah, my birthday's in ordinary time.
Cool.
Sometimes Audrey's birthday is in Easter time.
So.
Oops, Easter time's over there. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, today, because it's kind of a new year, and we're starting a new series of lessons in the Old Testament, which is the oldest part of the Bible and the beginning part of the Bible, and we're going to be talking about one of the greatest prophets. Do you know what a prophet is? Can you guess?
All about a holiday?
Not quite. There are prophets associated with holidays, but a prophet is somebody who speaks for God to the people.
Cool.
Yes, it's a big job. You have to be really courageous because sometimes you have to tell the people what they don't want to hear.
Even if they're afraid.
And yeah, even if you're afraid, if God gives you a message for the people, the prophet delivers the message, even if it can get him in trouble. Yeah.
Funny.
Yeah. And you have to be brave, and you also have to be kind of humble, because if people get used to hearing you speak the words of God, sometimes it would be tempting to just say what you thought and just pretend that's the word of God too. But they have to be really careful that they only give us the message that God wants us to hear. The prophet we're going to be talking about for the next few weeks is the prophet Elijah. You ever heard of that? Do you have any friends named Elijah?
Yeah, Eli, I forgot his middle name, but Eli Hatch.
Okay. Elijah's or Eli, or is kind of a
Oh, Eli.
It's okay. If you think of it later, tell me, okay? All right. Yeah, so Elijah's kind of a common name, and Elijah means one who worships God. Did you know that? We're going to be hearing about that. One who worships the one true God. So let's hear some stories about Elijah. You ready? Okay. Brooklyn just told me that the Bible is a big book. And she's right, it is. And it's actually a lot of books. You know that. We've been looking at the New Testament. We've talked about a lot of New Testament books. The Old Testament has 39 books. And the books that we're going to be talking about for September and most of October are the books of history in the Bible. There's all kinds of books. There's poetry books in the Bible. There's gospel books. There's Revelation. There's letters in the Bible. But we're going to be talking about two of the books of history, 1st and 2nd Kings. And our story today comes from the 17th chapter of the 1st book of Kings. And it has to do, this story takes place after Abraham, after King David, in the 9th century, 900 years before Jesus came, in the 9th century BC. And at that time, Israel and Judah were the people of God. And they had what's called a covenant relationship with God. Have you ever heard that word covenant? No, it's kind of not a word you hear very often. It's a kind of a promise. And the promise says, if I do this and you do that, you do that. Like we agree to do things for each other, and we make a deal and maybe sign some papers. We can make a covenant between each other.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah, so God made a covenant with the Hebrew people. He made a deal with them, and he said, if I will be your God and you'll worship only me, then I will take you to a special land. I'll give you everything you need. I'll give you riches and wealth and a land flowing with milk and honey. Do you like milk and honey?
Yeah, milk and honey.
It really is good. Yeah, it really is good. So the land flowing with milk and honey, but the deal is you have to worship only me. Okay, that was the deal. And if you don't worship only me, then I'm not going to protect you anymore. That's the deal. Does it sound like a good deal? Milk and honey if you're good, and no protection if you're bad? Yeah, okay. Well, that was the deal.
That's protection if you're good.
Yeah. So the king of at this time was named Omri, and there was all kinds of war and fighting going on, and he wanted to stop the fighting. Now that sounds like a good plan, right? I would like to not fight if I didn't have to. But one of the ways that he decided to stop the fighting was to marry his son Ahab to the daughter of his enemy, so that they would stop fighting. Like if they were one big family, they would stop fighting.
And so they can have peace and balance.
Yeah, so they can have peace and balance. And that sounded like a good plan, but the problem was that Ahab the king, whoops, that's not the king, that's the prophet. This is the king, the big tall guy with the crown. Worshiped the one true God.
Uh-huh.
But when his wife came from her land, her name was Jezebel. Yeah, I remember only the story teller gets to touch, right? Yeah. So Ahab and Jezebel got married, but when Jezebel came to marry Ahab, she said, I don't worship your God. I worship a different God. And the only way that I'm going to be your wife is that if I get to bring my priests and statues of my gods and my temples and put them in your land. Sound fair?
Mm-hmm.
But do you remember the covenant?
I'm a fast forgetter a little.
Yeah, the covenant says that the people can only worship the one true God. They're only going to worship the one true God, and if she brings her gods in, then God is going to withdraw his protection. He's going to be angry because they broke the covenant. Do you ever break a promise? Never? Anybody ever break a promise to you? How did it feel?
Really mean and sad.
Yeah. So when the Hebrew people who promised to worship only God broke their promise and let other gods in, how do you think God felt?
Really sad and mad, like me.
Probably.
Like maybe they should share the. Maybe if here, I'm just gonna say something real quick. So if God and the other God became friends, he wouldn't be upset, and the king wouldn't be upset either, and wouldn't have to fight.
But in this way, there's one true God and the other gods are fake gods.
I did not know that.
Yeah, just one true God. So she wants to bring her fake gods in here. The one true God is not happy about that.
Shoot.
Yeah. So, you know what I think? I think maybe he should have maybe got a different wife if they couldn't come to an agreement, don't you?
Yeah, they should just be friends.
I think so. Probably just be friends.
And I take everything I said back.
Yeah. Well, so here is these people, and they have broken their promise. And so Elijah got a message from God.
Good.
And when he has a message to God to give to the people, what do we call him?
Jesus.
Well, Jesus is someone who brought message from God. Remember the word I just taught you? What is it? Prophet. Elijah got a message to be a prophet. And the message was, you need to tell Ahab, the king, that he's doing the wrong thing. He is. But it's kind of hard to tell the king that he's doing the wrong thing. Like the king can put you in jail.
Or you can find another king.
Well.
The other king will put the other king in prison because he's a king too.
Well, I don't know. It's not always how it works. Sometimes they go to war. Yeah. And Jezebel especially didn't want to hear that she had to stop worshiping the other fake gods. So Elijah was probably a little afraid. But he went and he gave the message. And here's what the message said. Ahab, you're not doing the right thing. And if you don't stop all this worship of different gods, bad things are going to happen. In fact, while you're thinking about it, I'm going to make the rain stop. There'll be no more rain in this land.
Or water.
Yeah, or water until I say so. How do you think Jezebel and Ahab felt about that?
Really sad. So they probably stopped the war.
Well, let's see what happened. What really happened was Elijah gave the message to them and they were angry. And so God told Elijah, you need to run and hide. You need to go somewhere and hide. So the first place he went was to like a cave, a ravine it was called. And there was a river flowing there. And God said, don't worry, just keep hiding. I'll have the birds bring you food.
That's nice, but
Yeah.
not worms.
Not worms, just people food. They bought him bread and all he needed every day. Isn't that kind of cool?
Birds only do that if you're nice to them.
Yeah. So for a while, the birds brought Elijah food, and he drank the water in the river, and he kind of hung out, kind of hoping that Ahab and Jezebel would not be angry with him anymore. But do you know what else happened? Well, pretty soon there was no rain, and what happens to a river when there's no rain?
They start to die without water.
That's right, they dry up. And so Elijah said, I can't stay here. I don't have any water, I'll die. And so God told Elijah to go to the house of a widow. Do you know what a widow is?
No.
It's just a woman whose husband has died. So there was a widow, and she had a little boy that she was bringing up. And he said, God said, they have a spare room, they'll let you stay with them. So Elijah went, and he saw the woman, and she was at the well trying to get water and picking up some sticks and things like that. And Elijah came to her and said, could you give me something to eat? I'm very hungry. And she said, I don't have anything to eat. I just have a little bit of flour and a little bit of oil, and I was just gonna make a little bit of bread with it and give it to my son and me, and then we were just gonna die. So I don't even have enough to give you. And Elijah told her, if you give me a little bit of your bread that you make and share it with me, God will make sure you have enough bread forever.
And then they won't have to die.
Yeah, do you think she believed him? Would you believe somebody told you a story like that?
No, I would just be like, only if you show me that you're telling the truth, and Pinky promised me that you're telling the truth, I will believe you.
Yeah. Well, she believed him, and she did give him the bread. And then when she went home, from then on, every time she took flour out of the jar to make bread, it magically refilled. And every time she took oil out of the jar to fry the bread or make the bread, it magically refilled.
That's God and Jesus helping.
I think it is. In fact, Elijah and the widow had a lot of different adventures, but those are stories for another day. So what did you learn, or what did you like about that story?
About where the king and queen were really mad, and then the guy hid in the cave and didn't have any water. The crows and birds gave him more food, but he ran out of water, so he went to a house, and a son and daughter and the parent, mom and dad, shared with the man who went in a cave who shared food. And then when they shared food, every time they took oil thingy, the oil, it grew back, and then they wouldn't have to die.
That's cool. Yeah, isn't it? Yeah.
Period.
So they reached out in faith and shared the last bit of their food, and then the food magically sort of God made it refill. So yeah. So we learned a little bit about God taking care of people in that story, don't we? Yeah. We're gonna have more stories about Elijah. Yeah. You learned 2 new words today. You learned prophet and covenant. Do you remember what they mean? Tell me prophet. We'll work on it some more. Okay. How about covenant?
I forgot again.
One's like a promise, and one's like somebody who speaks for God. Which one do you think is somebody who speaks for God? Prophet or covenant?
Prophet.
And so covenant is like what?
Like sharing.
Like a promise.
Yeah.
Like a promise that you
like
make.
A pinky promise.
Like a pinky promise. They said, you be my God and I'll take care of you. Pinky promise.
Pinky promise.
All right.
And if you break it, your friends will be upset and mad, just like the king and queen.
Yeah, just like God was when the king and queen broke the promise. Yeah. Okay. So I think that's enough to think about for 1 week, don't you?
Yep.
You look like you want to do something. What would you like to do? What would you like to do?
I would like to blow out the candle.
The candle that says, worship time is over. See you next week.